guys? Noah Jai from the Geek Week here, and we've got an interesting one today. Today we'll be doing an anime perspective, more or less on viewpoints on the modern day anime community and where it's come from, where we came from and where we are today, and how that makes the general public feel and how that makes me feel. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and I hope you enjoy the video. Anime has come a long way in America over the last 20 years, and it's still growing. I'd say for the past 10 years or so, there's been a monumental shift in the way the medium is viewed by the general public in the US. With that has come a natural divide in the community. That divide being OGs and purists, and casual viewers and newcomers. Now, this is nothing new in niche genre communities. In fact, I can't think of any that it doesn't occur in. Fighting games, pretty much any competitive video game, book communities, hell, even sports fan bases. If you guys are WWE fans out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But this perspective will focus mostly on purists and OGs in the United States anime community as I've experienced it. But before I get started, there's a few things I should probably make very clear. When I say OGs and purists in regards to the anime community, I am referring to people who are fans of the genre during a specific time period of 3 years. That time period being 1996 to 1998. I mean, you could have got into it like 1999 to early 2000s. I think for me it was more or less 1999, 2000. But those 3 years are important. I will explain them in detail in a moment. But first, I should probably just say that that was around the time period that I got into anime. But I'm not naive enough to think or believe everybody got into anime at that time. I'm very aware there were fans of the genre that are much older than I am, that were already deep fans by the time 1996 came around, with a love for anime that I have not even begun to know. But one thing I think we can all agree on, the hardcore anime fans before the year 1996 were few and far between. I mean, and anime was just really not that accessible back then. I mean, the only way you were watching anime was via VHS. This is long before anime apps, websites. I mean, I'm not going to say you couldn't have been in like an anime forum online. You most certainly could have been in the late 90s, but I mean, it wasn't growing that fast on dial-up internet. I mean, come on now, let's get real. But make no mistake about this though, guys. I myself am like a huge retro anime stan. I mean, Mobile Suit Gundam, Captain Harlock, City Hunter, Akira. I mean, my favorite anime character of all time is Lupin the Third. I mean, come on. But these things are in fact retro, you know? Like, half of these shows I had to look up on my own time, well into my fandom, you know? Like, this was well into me watching and getting into the genre that I went back and looked into these things that were well revered. But I think without a doubt, the period I'm going to explain not only brought the anime to you, it was the beginning of the expansion, I think, of the true growth that we see what's come of the anime community today in the United States. In 1996, Dragon Ball Z first airs to good ratings, not a crazy huge viewing base. Immediately it had very good ratings, I should say that. 1997, Toonami's first blocks air on Cartoon Network. And this is huge because Cartoon Network brings anime right into your living room, right? Right into everybody's living room. Everybody that had cable had Cartoon Network, and every kid that had that TV was watching it. Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, Disney Channel. That was in the late 90s, early 2000s. That was life back then. So going from not accessible at all to immediately accessible. Mind you, it was limited back then. You were limited to the shows they gave you, but going from nothing to that was huge back then. And obviously Dragon Ball Z was the flagship anime behind Toonami, but I should say this is more of a history lesson. There was a different cast that originally did the first 2 seasons of Dragon Ball Z, but the first 2 seasons is all we had of Dragon Ball Z for a long time. But that's a history lesson I'm not going to get into in this video. But I did think it was important not to just mention Dragon Ball Z, but to also mention Toonami, especially for me, because although Dragon Ball Z might have been the first one to really pull me in, without Toonami having a variety of animes, I might not have even known that it was a genre. You know, when you're a young kid, it was just a cartoon show, and to me, it was the best cartoon show. But then, you know, amongst seeing the other shows, you realize, oh, these are different than other shows. You know, these are their own genre of shows. And then, of course, in 1998, Pokemon first airs in the United States. Most kids probably didn't even realize Pokemon was an anime, and you'd be forgiven for thinking that. Shit, I was one of them at first. I lived in the public library's comic section as a kid, and at first for me it was Spider-Man and Marvel. I'm a huge Marvel fanboy. But before I even got to my Dragon Ball mangas, there was Pokemon manga. And I can still remember today the manga for Pokemon being in color, like American panels, and but something about them just feeling so different. But if you've ever seen South Park, their episode on Pokemon, Pokemon, it's very clear that adults at the time knew it was a Japanese cartoon. But combined with the merchandise and the games that actually influenced the anime, I mean, Pokemon was always really destined to succeed. I don't think there's any way it could fail. I know that there was a lot of fans at different ends of the spectrum during that 3-year period, but I think one thing we can all agree on is that after that 3-year period, anime became way more accessible than it had ever been before. Thus, the fan base began to expand like it never had before. Not anywhere near the heights of today, but I think we can all agree that the expansion definitely took off at that point. While the genre became more accessible and more fans like me started to pop up all over, that doesn't mean that the medium was being accepted by the general public. I want to be like as honest as I can here. Probably the opposite, really. I mean, anime fans were ostracized when I was young, growing up in young communities. Back in those days, and honestly, putting it mildly, you'd hear people say things that were just, crazy to say today, but if you watched anime, you're gay, or and the one thing I remember vividly back then, everything was to outsiders was Dragon Ball Z. You watch that Dragon Ball Z shit. Oh, you're into that Dragon Ball Z shit, and it was infuriating back then, man. It was infuriating. Every anime was Dragon Ball. It was hard to argue with them because, while at the time, obviously, I was into so many more animes like Inuyasha, Yu Yu Hakusho, Rurouni Kenshin. I most definitely did fuck with Dragon Ball Z. So it was man, I'd just be confirming their already preconceived misconceptions. So it was it was always much easier for me to just say nothing. And I always found it easier to just keep that part of myself to myself. But don't get me wrong, you could definitely meet anime fans back then, and I certainly did, but it was just hard. And I remember having friends who didn't keep that stuff to themselves, and they were picked on, man. And I stood up for a lot of them on multiple occasions, but I was never confident enough or brave enough myself to stand with them. And now I want to be very clear in this part here, because this is easily probably one of the biggest regrets in my life. And there's even a small chance that there's somebody out there that this relates to that's listening. I want to be very clear on this part here. I was a coward. I was definitely a coward. There's nothing cool about being ashamed of who you are. And if that can help you now, I hope it does. You need to hear that, because there's no reason it should have taken me or anybody, if it did happen to anybody else, 17 years to realize that. You should be proud of who you are and express that. You shouldn't care about what other people think about that or what they have to say about that. But back to my original point. Is the anime today mainstream, man? Of course it is. It's widely popular, and it's more accessible than ever before. If the anime scene today, being the way it is quote-unquote mainstream, means the fans of the genre can freely express however they like without fear of judgment and prosecution, if it means they don't have to experience the things I had to go through and witness people close to me go through when becoming fans of anime and other niche genres, then we should be happy, man. It means everything that my friends weren't cowards stood for meant something. It means everything that I was too cowardly to say meant something. And to me, that means something. I mean, instead of looking back on all those early years of the anime communities growing with disdain, I mean, we should look at it as the start of something beautiful. I mean, because it was, and we were all a part of that. I mean, if anime and other niche genre realms never came as far as they did, I may not have a YouTube channel, I may not be talking to you right now. But most important of all, more important than anything I've said up to this point, if they never came as far as they did, I couldn't share with you some of the most cherished moments in my life. Moments that brought us to this very second. Moments like my Aunt Lisa renting Howl's Moving Castle from Blockbuster in 2005. unknowingly introducing a young anime fan to one of the greatest, if not the greatest animator ever in Hayao Miyazaki, and the love affair that would ensue with his films. Or moments like my mother renting A New Hope from Blockbuster in 1999 or 2000 or whatever it was because she didn't want to watch Phantom Menace for the 300th time, and that spiraling me into my love affair marriage with the Star Wars universe. I mean, moments I can share like this because of how far the communities have come, and I'm never going to take that for granted, ever. So to my fellow OGs and purists out there, man, if you're of the mindset that you're better than fans of the new generation, because they didn't go through things that we did and they didn't have it as hard as we did and have to experience these hardships, don't be. Don't be. All I can say is don't be. How about instead talk to them, make friends with them, and grow the community, man. It's literally everything we've ever wanted. That's all I got for today, man. Let me know what you think. Get in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. If you guys felt similar, man, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. But I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.